Final Gambit Staraptor is really useful when it comes to taking out early KOs or setting up your team into more favorable matchups. But there's also a better opportunity if you manage to get a second Pokemon too. You can further take out any crucial support Pokemon that the team needs or get rid of any other attackers that might cause problems later in the game. For anyone that doesn't know about Final Gambit, this is a move that deals damage based on the amount of HP you have. For example, a Mega Charizard Y running a max 185 HP set can still get one-shotted if another Pokemon using that move has higher HP than them. But after using this move, the user will also faint. More importantly, it ignores any of the opposing Pokemon's defensive stats. To get this out of the way, Lucario would not be my main starting lineup. While it's no problem for Staraptor and Lucario to simply press Final Gambit, some teams will lead out a Ghost-type Pokemon rendering Final Gambit useless due to it being a Fighting-type move. However, there's a simple workaround to this. By using Mega Lopunny, it has the ability Scrappy, allowing Lopunny to hit Ghost-types with Fighting-type moves and use Copycat to pull off Final Gambit. For the rest of the team, they all have their attack maxed out and have good offensive coverage depending on what I'm going up against. On paper, this team is pretty flimsy. Since everyone's speed stats are over the place, it struggles against priority moves, Tailwind, or Trick Room. But they all have their different ways to control the turn order and can decently tank one hit if needed. And with that out of the way, I'll get started with some of the matches. So to start off, my opponent leads with Staraptor and Weavile, while I bring out Staraptor and Lopunny. The main problem here is Weavile, since it can either use Fake Out to stop any of my Mons, or use Triple Axle to stop my Staraptor. In this case, Copycat is actually the safest play here. Even if Weavile ends up deciding to use Fake Out, Lopunny can use Copycat to stop the other Staraptor. Luckily, Weavile didn't use Fake Out, and I immediately got to pick up 2 KOs in the first turn. The last 2 Pokemon ended up being Garchomp and Sylveon, while I brought out Blastoise and Gallade. I knew Blastoise can take care of Garchomp, but I wasn't exactly sure if Gallade could one-shot Sylveon, so in the end I decided to double up on Sylveon. However, Garchomp went to use Earthquake, but for some reason Sylveon didn't use Protect. With Sylveon out of the way, I was able to finish up the game with no relative issues. This one's a more meta team, but the same principles apply, and I generally think this is one of the best counters to it. Flood in Incineroar at first, but since we know that Fake Out is basically meaningless, we're able to take 2 free KOs. The last 2 Pokemon ended up being Kingambit and Basculegion, but there wasn't really much need to worry about since I had Focus Sash on Gallade to survive a Sucker Punch while my Kingambit Sucker Punch their Basculegion. Even with Chople Berry, Gallade is still strong enough to bypass that damage thanks to its Sharpness ability, dealing 50% more damage with Fighting-type moves. And just for reference, this match only took 3 minutes. For the next one, this is going to be a Trick Room team. No one appears to outspeed Lopunny, and there's actually something we could do to take advantage of that. Lopunny uses Fake Out to break Mimikyu's disguise, and Staraptor picks up on Hilo list. By doing this, Lopunny still has access to Final Gambit since it was the last turn used. And after Gallade takes out Conkeldurr, we're able to create a 2v1 scenario on whoever the final Pokemon is. Unfortunately, Conkeldurr was a little more bulkier than I thought, but Lopunny still managed to pick up Mimikyu anyway. Would have been nice to get a double kill, but that's fine. Last Pokemon is Abominable, meaning Mimikyu was the actual Trick Room setter, and from there, it was a clean sweep. By now, I think you get the point. For this one, this is a rain team with Whimsicott and Archicaludon. They can't really do anything, even with Tailwind, but the actual Pokemon I was concerned with was Mega Swampert along with Pelipper. However, my team wasn't in any real danger, and after using Leaf Blade on Swampert, Pelipper didn't have much of an answer to counter me after that. And for the final match, my opponent leads off with Goldango and Sneasler. Both of them decided to use Protect since they weren't sure what Pokemon I was going to Mega, but neither of them couldn't really do anything after they found out I was going to use Final Gambit. Tyranitar and Mamoswine were the last 2 Pokemon, and after some back and forth exchange between Protect and Sucker Punch, I was able to get Mamoswine and call it a day. Before wrapping things up, I do want to say that this team is a gimmick at best. There's something about Lopunny's Copycat that I've yet to mention. When selecting this move, you actually don't get to choose who you're targeting. Sometimes it will get the Pokemon you need, but other times it would completely obliterate a Pokemon on 1 HP. Also, if you're in a scenario where you're not sure on who's going to attack and one of them has Fake Out, Lopunny has a 50-50 chance to get it right or else something bad happens. And in which case my Lopunny faked out the Mega Raichu and Cloudster used Terrain Pulse on my Staraptor. But if you want to try this team out for yourself, feel free to give me suggestions since this is actually my first time playing competitive Pokemon, and yeah, that's about it.